My mother, Victoria Harrison, built Harrison luxury hotels from a single boutique property into a 17-hotel empire that stretched across the East Coast. She was a Forbes feature, a CNBC regular, a keynote speaker at hospitality summits, a self-made legend, and she never let anyone forget it, least of all me. I'm Catherine Harrison, 32, the middle daughter, and by family consensus, the disappointment. Diane, my older sister, is the company's glamorous VP of marketing, six-figure salary, company Mercedes, custom-tailored power suits. Beth, the youngest, manages 3 flagship properties, lives in penthouses, and wears Chanel to breakfast. And then there's me, a remote software architect. I live in a quiet 2-bedroom home, drive a practical Subaru, wear hoodies, and actually like my life. To my mother, that made me an embarrassment, an asterisk in her perfect brand story. This is Catherine, she'd say at events, her tone dripping with apology. She does something with computers. Not she's a senior systems architect. Not she specializes in financial infrastructure. Just something with computers, as if I collected trash for a living. She loved simple stories. Diane was the marketing prodigy. Beth was the hospitality genius. And me? I was the daughter who walked away and settled for mediocrity. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd walked away at 23 with a plan. I'd saved $100,000 from years of summer work and invested every penny in cryptocurrency back in 2013, when Bitcoin was worth $100 and everyone called it a scam. By 2017, that scam was worth $8 million. I diversified, sold 70%, invested in tech, real estate trusts, and index funds. By 28, I was sitting on $34 million. By 30, $89 million. And then I made my boldest move yet, one that would have made my mother's blood run cold. I started buying Harrison Luxury Hotels stock. When she took the company public 6 years ago, she'd kept 32% ownership. Diane had 8%, Beth 5%. The rest belonged to funds, firms, and anonymous shareholders. I spent 2 years, quietly, legally, strategically, acquiring that remaining 55%, through shell companies, trusts, and offshore entities. By the end, I owned 61% of Harrison Luxury Hotels. My mother owned 32%. She was the face of the company, but I was its controlling shareholder. And she had no idea. Under my silent ownership, revenue grew from $340 million to $520 million. The stock price rose 34%. For new properties opened. Everything looked golden, at least, from the outside. But my mother's ego had outpaced her success. Every family dinner became a lecture on business vision. You have to understand hospitality, she'd say, carving her salmon like a CEO. It's not just rooms, it's about experiences, loyalty, luxury psychology. I'd nod politely while mentally reviewing reports that showed declining customer retention and diluted brand value. Then she'd turn to my sisters. Catherine wouldn't understand. She'd say sweetly, she's not in business. She works from home, in her pajamas. Business casual, actually, but I'd stopped correcting her years ago. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago, at her annual charity gala. A black tie spectacle more about status than philanthropy. Mom in custom Vera Wang, Diane in Valentino, Beth in Dior. Me, a simple black Nordstrom dress and pearl earrings. Catherine, Mom exclaimed when I arrived, voice overly bright. You came. I wasn't sure you'd feel comfortable here. I'm fine, Mom. Good, good, try to mingle. I know networking isn't really your strength. She floated off to greet a senator, leaving me to stand there, the invisible daughter, while executives discussed strategies I had already approved and expansions I had already funded. At dinner, I was seated at the far end of the family table, next to her CFO, who barely looked up from his phone. Diane bragged, the Atlantic City properties outperforming projections by 23%. Excellent work, Mom said proudly. That's the Harrison standard, excellence. Beth chimed in. The Miami renovations under budget. Suites ready for peak season. Brilliant. Mom beamed. You girls understand what it takes to run an empire. Then she turned to me with that syrupy smile that always preceded an insult. So, Catherine, how's your computer work? Still working from home? Yes, I said evenly. I'm doing systems architecture for a fintech firm. Fintech? She wrinkled her nose. That's like apps, right? Financial infrastructure, I corrected. Right. Well, I just worry about you in that little house. No team, no leadership role. Don't you get lonely? I'm fine. It's just, you chose such a small life, dear, and that's okay. Not everyone's meant for leadership. Diane smirked. Beth looked at me with pity. Mom continued, you've never managed operations, never had to make big decisions. Business isn't about coding, it's about vision, risk, scale. You're too poor to understand what real business is. The table went silent. Too poor. I'm not poor, I said quietly. Oh, of course not, dear, she said, waving her hand. You make a decent living, but you can't understand what it's like managing a $500 million enterprise. Stick to your day job, Diane added with a grin. Leave business to the business people. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A message from Robert Chin, my investment advisor. Catherine, urgent. Your mother's pushing an acquisition through the board. Overvalued chain. Risky markets. $120 million debt. As majority shareholder, you may want to intervene. I looked around the table, at my mother, lecturing me about business. My sisters, basking in reflected glory. The CFO, oblivious to who really signed his paychecks. Catherine, Mom said sharply, are we boring you with business talk? I smiled faintly. Actually, I said, standing, I need to make a call. Business matter. She laughed. Business matter? Catherine, please, I'm sure your computer thing can wait. It's not a computer thing, I said, meeting her eyes. It's a shareholder thing. I stepped out into the marble hallway and called Robert. What's happening? I asked. Your mother's forcing an acquisition vote tomorrow morning. She's got her allies lined up, unless the majority shareholder steps in. And if I do? Then she'll finally know who owns her company. I thought about 8 years of being dismissed, pitted, underestimated. Schedule an emergency shareholder meeting, I said. Tonight, on a Saturday, during your mother's charity gala? Now, Robert, I said, send the formal notice. Every board member, every executive, we're having this conversation tonight, while they're all still in the building. A pause crackled over the line. You're sure? I've never been surer. Send it. I walked back to the ballroom, my pulse steady. My mother was mid-story, something about negotiating with contractors. Her hands animated, voice rich with authority. Then Richard's phone buzzed. Once, then again, then again. He frowned, checked the screen, and froze. Victoria, he said slowly, I just received a formal notice for an emergency shareholder meeting. Tonight. Mom stopped talking. What? That's impossible. Who called it? The majority shareholder. Someone named Cascade Holdings Group. She laughed, sharp, incredulous. We don't have a majority shareholder. The shares are scattered across dozens of entities. No one owns more than 12%. Richard glanced at the message again. According to this, Cascade Holdings owns 61% of Harrison Luxury Hotels. They're exercising their right to call an emergency board meeting. All executives and board members are required to attend immediately. Murmurs began to ripple through the room. Phones buzzed. Executives frowned. The hotel's general counsel, Jacob Morrison, appeared beside our table, his expression grave. Victoria, he said carefully, I've received the same notice. It's legitimate. Cascade Holdings has properly documented their position. They have full authority to call the meeting. Mom's face hardened. This is absurd. This is my event. Someone's playing games. Mom, I said quietly, you have to attend. It's legally binding. She didn't even look at me. Catherine, please. The adults are handling this. I met her gaze. I know. That's why I called the meeting. The table fell silent. What? Her voice cracked slightly. I'm Cascade Holdings, I said evenly. I own 61% of Harrison Luxury Hotels, and I'm calling an emergency meeting to discuss your acquisition proposal. Diane laughed in disbelief. You're kidding. I'm not. Richard's hands were trembling slightly as he scrolled through the filings. The records traced to a trust managed by Apex Capital. K.M. Harrison Trust. Catherine Marie Harrison. I said. That's me. Mom shot to her feet. This is ridiculous. You don't have that kind of money. Do you know what a controlling stake would cost? Hundreds of millions. 187 million. I replied. I started buying shares 2 years ago. Legally. Quietly. All through Apex. You don't have that kind of money, Diane said, her voice brittle. You're a remote contractor. You drive a Subaru. I have 340 million, give or take. I said. I invested in cryptocurrency in 2013. It's done well. Beth stared like she was seeing a ghost. You're rich. Like, actually rich? I'm saying, I corrected, that I'm your mother's boss, and I'm concerned about her decision to leverage this company into unnecessary debt for the sake of a headline. Mom's expression twisted, disbelief giving way to fury. You can't own me. This is my company. It's a public company, I said calmly, and I own 61% of it. That makes it mostly mine. Jacob stepped forward, his tone cautious. Victoria, if this is accurate, she has the right to block any acquisition. She can replace board members, even leadership. Replace? Mom repeated, her voice rising. Catherine, you're not serious. Conference room B, I said, standing. We'll hold the meeting there, board members only. I looked at my sisters. You're not on the board. Wait here. This is insane, Diane hissed. No, I said, turning away. This is business, the kind you never thought I understood. I walked toward the conference room, heels echoing across the marble floor. Behind me came whispers, hurried footsteps, the sharp click of my mother's heels trying to catch up. Minutes later, the boardroom filled, 7 members. Mom, Richard, Jacob, and Robert Chin, already waiting with his laptop. Mom refused to sit, arms crossed, fury radiating. Catherine, I don't know what game you're playing. No game, I said. Robert, display the ownership records. He connected his laptop. On the screen, Cascade Holdings Group, K.M. Harrison Trust 61, 3% ownership. Martha Simmons, one of the longest-serving board members, let out a low whistle. That's controlling interest. Correct, I said, which means I can veto any major action, including the acquisition you're pushing. Mom's jaw tightened. That acquisition is critical, expanding into the Midwest. We'll drop our profit margins from 9.3% to 6.1%. I cut in, and spike our debt-to-equity ratio to dangerous levels. Richard blinked. How do you know those numbers? I've been reviewing every quarterly report for 2 years, as majority shareholder. That's my right. Mom's voice sharpened. You've been spying on us? I've been monitoring an investment, I said evenly. One that's showing worrying trends, rising debt, falling retention, declining occupancy. You're building on leverage, Mom, not on value. Jacob leaned forward. Miss Harrison, what's your intention here? My intention, I said, is to stop a bad acquisition. I pulled up a document on my tablet and slid it forward. Independent analysis values that hotel chain at 73 million, not 120. 3 of the 6 locations are operating at a loss. 2 are in declining markets. The deal's vanity, not strategy. Richard looked sick. I never saw this report. Because she never commissioned it, I said. She fell in love with the headline. Harrison Hotels expands to 25 properties. Mom's voice trembled with anger. I built this company from nothing. 1 property to 17. Hundreds of jobs. Our family's fortune. And now you're lecturing me about business? Yes, I said quietly, because I own 61% of it, and I'm not going to let ego drive it into the ground. Her voice cracked. Ego? Yes, Mom, I said. You called it yourself at dinner. You want to hit 25 properties. Not because it makes financial sense, but because it sounds impressive. Because it makes you look like you're still growing, still relevant. Still the hospitality visionary everyone writes about. But running a great company isn't about headlines, Mom. It's about sustainability, real, measurable value. Robert slid a document across the table. I should note, he said evenly, Catherine's had offers to sell her stake. 3 private equity firms approached Apex about buying Cascade Holdings' position. The highest bid, $243 million. That's a $56 million profit on her original investment. The room froze. You could sell? Richard asked, stunned. I could sell tomorrow, I replied. Take the profit, walk away, and let them restructure the company however they please. They'd probably fire half the executive team, starting with Mom. That's what PE firms do. Mom's eyes shifted, and for the first time, I saw fear. But I don't want to sell, I continued. I want to fix this. I want Harrison Hotels to be stable, profitable, and well-managed. I want my investment to grow responsibly, which means ending reckless acquisitions and enforcing financial discipline. Mom's voice softened. And my role? You stay COO. You're excellent at hospitality, branding, and guest experience, but you're not built for finance or risk management. So, Richard oversees financial decisions, with my approval for anything over 10 million. You handle operations. We each stick to our strengths. Her lips tightened. You're stripping my authority. No, I'm protecting a $500 million company from unnecessary risk. That's what majority shareholders do. Jacob was already taking notes. We'll need updated governance documents, new authorization limits, revised committees. Do it, I said, and schedule a full audit within 90 days, independent firm. Comprehensive review. Several board members nodded. Even Martha murmured, agreed. Mom stared at the table, her once unshakable image fracturing. The self-made CEO, now confronted by her failure daughter who actually owned the empire she ran. I called you too poor to understand business, she said quietly. You did. You own my company. You've owned it for 2 years. Yes. Her voice broke. I'm an idiot. No, I said gently. You're just a good operator who lost sight of the fundamentals. That's why oversight exists. She swallowed. How long have you had this kind of money? I crossed 8 figures at 28, 9 at 31. I'm around 340 now. Through the glass wall, I noticed Diane and Beth watching, frozen, wide-eyed. Mom followed my gaze. Your sisters, this will change everything. It already has, I said. The so-called family failure turned out to be the secret success. The daughter who works in pajamas owns the company. The lectures about business acumen? Aimed at someone with a $340 million portfolio. Her next words were almost a whisper. How do I fix this? You apologize, I said simply. Not as a CEO, as a mother. Admit you were wrong. Then work with me, not against me. She nodded slowly. The acquisition? Dead, I said. If you push it, I'll call a vote to remove you as CEO. Her jaw tightened. Clear. Good. Now let's go back to your gala and pretend this was just another board meeting. We'll announce the changes Monday. Tonight, we smile and raise money for children's hospitals. We stepped into the ballroom. The conversations stopped. The air shifted, every eye watching, trying to read what had happened behind those glass doors. Mom's face was composed but pale. Richard looked shaken. Board members whispered to their spouses. Diane rushed forward. What the hell just happened? She hissed. People are saying you own the company. I do. 61%. That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. I have around $340 million. I said calmly. Started with crypto in 2013. Diversified. Compounded. When I saw Harrison Hotel stock undervalued 2 years ago, I bought in. Beth's eyes widened. So your stake alone is worth over $300 million? 305 at current valuation. Diane scoffed. You wear hoodies. You drive a Subaru. Because I invest in assets, not depreciation. Compounding requires discipline, not designer handbags. You sound like a finance lecture, she muttered. No, I said. I sound like someone who actually understands wealth, something Mom said I'd never do. Beth's phone buzzed. Oh my God, it's on Twitter. Someone at the gala leaked it. Reporters are picking it up. Good, I said. Transparency is healthy. By the time I got home, the headlines had already spread. Wall Street Journal, Harrison Hotel's majority shareholder revealed as CEO's daughter. Bloomberg, mystery investor behind Harrison Hotels, Catherine Harrison's $300 million stake. My inbox was flooded, analysts, journalists, Private equity offers. Robert's email sat at the top. Catherine, board vote unanimous. Governance changes approved. Financial audit scheduled. New PE offer, $267 million. I smiled and typed back. Not selling. I'm going to fix this company and prove Mom wrong one last time. Turns out, I understand business better than she ever did.